Thank you, Matthias. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be back here this year. My name is Jozef Hrabina. I'm a geopolitical risks advisor. I have obtained my PhDs at Moscow State Institute of International Relations, known as GIMO, and then I worked very closely on issues of Russo-Ukrainian war. Currently, this is a primary subject of my company, geopolitics. I had not very pleasant honor to travel the entire Ukrainian front line over the past 12 months. Last time I've been to Ukraine, it was 2 months ago at the Orikhiv front, and I'm planning to go back in 2 weeks. Why am I saying all of that? Because now I'll try to bridge some of the theory presented today with an actual practice. This presentation has been done for McGill University in Montreal, where I just recently gave series of lectures on state of Russo-Ukrainian war. Unlike for 1.5 hour long lectures, I'm gonna point out only the most important thing, and these are the most important dynamics, most important, I would say, breaking points in over the course of this war. I will start with Russia is not going to do it. We all remember that I'm guilty as charged. We fell into a trap, or not so trap, just like Russians fell into their own trap, because you could see that Russia was unprepared, and we were following the traces of preparations for large-scale military operation, whereas Russia amassed 120,000 troops in the Ukrainian border territory, which is absolutely not sufficient amount of soldiers, and not to mention supplies. That's why we saw military columns burning and standing on highways that were absolutely abandoned or unable to conduct military operations, because they were undersupplied. They didn't have established supply lines, and therefore they couldn't form military formations and engage in an actual fighting. While on the other hand, the Ukrainians were prepared, and plus Russians didn't really expect any resistance. I can confirm these things. I can confirm this dynamic from for instance, stories that are now a folklore in Ukraine, when Russian soldiers would call to Mariupol or to Kyiv, and they would try to book tables to celebrate their victories in a few days from launch of the invasion. Or they would try to rent flats around Kyiv. They weren't even in country, and many people would tell you the stories about how they received a call from some Russian guy that was trying to rent a flat in Kyiv or book a table in this for celebrating the victory. And also the people who would find the abandoned military vehicles in all around Russian abandoned military vehicles, they would find ceremonial uniforms in these vehicles, because they were really ready to just parade Kyiv in a few days, and that's it. So, I broke it again. Oh no. So this is what I was just talking about. Of course, Russia was fighting according to Soviet doctrine. They wanted to capture the airfields around the areas they planned to occupy. Ukraine was ready for that, trained by NATO doctrine already at that time. If you take the U.S. Congressional Research Center, its report from 2021 says that Ukraine army got 95,000 soldiers of Ukrainian army got training by NATO, plus they got equipped by from the U.S. From U.S. sources. So this is why Russians completely failed in the first month. absolutely unprepared, and Ukrainians were prepared. Corruption in Kherson and Mykolaiv regions, very important. Basically, these regions gave up to Russians they gave up to Russians because their officials were corrupt. These corruption schemes were discovered. There were long-standing relationships between Ukrainian local officials and Russian intelligence services or some officials in Crimea. For instance, very interesting case, a land bridge between Crimea and Zaporizhia regions. Let me try to, maybe the counter-offensive map will be better. So this land bridge here was always protected from 2014, since the illegal annexation of Crimea. This land bridge was protected by Ukrainian military, very well guarded. People who would go to Azov Sea or the near areas to fish, they would always report that there are checkpoints and militaries guarding these crossings. And a week before the invasion, these checkpoints were abandoned, and Russians were able to cross. Oh yeah, these pictures are my personal archives. On the left, you can see what I called the idea of Russian world, so-called Ruski Mir. On the right, you can see damage by the notorious, glided bombs, which are now very widely used by Russian military. These are airborne bombs that are causing crazy damage. Really a big deal of damage. What I would say, we had the change to this is again on the left, that's Kupiansk direction, Petropavlivka. On the right, this is Russian infantry fighting vehicle from Orekhiv direction. Here I would like to describe one very important dynamic. In 2022, you would have Russian army incapable of conducting any successful offensive operations. They were stretched thin, chased away by Ukrainian army in the great counteroffensive from fall 2022. Many of you remember that event. This was an event where, in my opinion, we should have pushed for peace, because this was the moment when Russian military was forced to be on a back foot. Not only that, I was saying at that time that Russia is very close to using tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield. Now it's been confirmed by William J. Burns, director of CIA, that Russia at that point was considering use of tactical nukes. Why? Russian elite, political elite, connected its survival with victory in this war. And they think about their survival as a Russian state. That changes completely, that changes the dynamic in thinking about use of nuclear weapons. So there is the discussion about saber rattling. No, it's not nuclear saber rattling. They're really serious about using nuclear weapons on the ground. What I wanted to say, and that's why Russia was forced to change, to reinvent itself. After 2022, we have 2023, beginning of 2023, battle for Bakhmut. In this battle, we would see Wagner Private Military Corps as the only capable force of conducting offensive operation within Russian military. Please, could you tell me the time plan? Thank you. We would see them. They engaged in a fierce infighting within Ministry of Defense that was largely incapable, while Wagner Private Military Corps were successful in conducting ground operations. You could see parallels between Wagner tactics and contemporary tactics Russia is using in the Pokrovsk direction today. small infantry units trying to avoid artillery and drone operations, riding in columns, absolutely wrong. In times of very efficient surveillance, imagine you're a soldier on the front line, you have a surveillance room, your unit sees everything, the whole section of your front, the whole section of the front line your unit is responsible for. They know about every movement because they have simultaneously several drones in the air. You don't even have to have a lot of men in units. This is very interesting compared to your presentation. Ukrainian units today are overwhelmingly undermanned. I would say 20% of their capacity long term, no rotations. And the only thing that is keeping them fighting, operational, is drones and artillery. Because you have drones in the air, you're surveilling the whole part of your front line, and then once you see an opponent approaching, you bomb the direction your opponent is approaching. This is how they are capable of keeping large amounts of Russian troops at bay. But what happened on the verge of 2023 and 2024, the military aid got stalled. And this is when Russians gained momentum on the battlefield, because there was an acute shortage of artillery shells. So this asymmetry could not be balanced by artillery and also anti-air systems and ammunition to anti-air systems. These two, including and plus drones, these are the major components that can help Ukraine to balance the numbers asymmetry on the ground. So back to the Russian performances in 2003. Russia was capable of averting the trend, the catastrophic trend in their military. They won battle for Bakhmut. What happened in the battle for Bakhmut, which is very important to stress out, they dragged Ukrainian forces and they kept engaged these forces in Bakhmut while they could prepare for Ukrainian offensive in summer 2023. This was in the Western minds, was supposed to be a breakthrough moment on the battlefield that will decide about the fate of this war. It actually decided the fate of this war, but not in Ukrainian advantage. Quite the contrary, Ukraine got exhausted in a battle over Bakhmut. Russian Ministry of Defense got prepared in Zaporizhia region, where there was the most likely direction of Ukrainian offensive. And in the meantime, they exhausted Wagnerites in Bakhmut. Then we knew that Prigozhin had his famous march on Moscow. In 2024, we see three major dynamics on the battlefield. We see march on Pokrovsk. Here, Russian forces yesterday entered city of Toretsk, which are directions subsequent to fall of Avdiivka, and plus there is a battle for Chasiv Yar. Capturing these areas will enable Russians to gain higher ground in Chasiv Yar, and they can shell areas of Kharkiv and supply routes coming from Kharkiv, which is one of the biggest Ukrainian cities, plus cut supply lines for Donetsk region, which is very likely one of the major operational goals of Russian troops today. That's me in Vovchansk. This city is non-existent today. There were released pictures. This is from exactly a year ago. This city completely ruined, destroyed, nothing there. I just saw pictures 2 days ago, and I was surprised. It was city of ghosts anyway, but now it's completely gone. It is gone due to the Kharkiv incursion of Russia in spring this year. It was largely unsuccessful. Yet there is a ground zero around the border where the incursion happened. Can I go back? Yes. Yeah, the one on the right. This is the direction of the Kharkiv incursion, Russian Kharkiv incursion. So Ukraine was prepared. We already discussed that. Secondly, bravery of local commanders. You would see, especially in late 2022 and early 2023, you would see that the units that were conducting counteroffensive operations in Ukraine, Ukrainian units, of course, they were led by local commanders, people that knew every stone, every hill, every meadow in their area. This has changed in the mid-2023. Nobody knows why, but this is thanks to Valery Zaluzhny, former commander-in-chief of Ukrainian armed forces, and basically he gave them local commanders free hand to pursue operational goals that were above the general objective. Why? Because they knew better the land they were fighting in. They maybe saw a better opportunity. They didn't have to wait for command to come from the top. Third, Western support, material support, intelligence, and economic support. All of them are equally important. All of them, without all of these, Ukraine would not survive 3 months, I would say. Intelligence, I mean, just the fact that the Western intelligence was preparing Ukrainian command for Russian military invasion, material support. I mean, we don't have to even discuss that. Ukrainian federal state budget is literally dependent on Western funding. Otherwise, they would not have any money. They would not have any money for military pensions. Basically, these are mirroring topics we discussed in Russia. Summer offensive 2023 in the middle. This is Zaporizhia front. This is Orikhiv here. Now it's widely discussed that Russia, it's not so widely discussed, but there are first information that Russia might be planning to conduct ground operations into Orikhiv to get deeper to the Zaporizhia Oblast. I can confirm that it's either Ukrainian PSY-op trying to persuade Russians that this direction is empty and they can take something, or they can send the troops from this direction to Kursk, which was recently occupied by Ukrainians, and Russians didn't have many spare troops to chase Ukrainians out. Or it's really true, and Ukraine is in very poor state, and Russians will probably advance in this direction. These are two hypotheses I am working with when it comes to the Kursk incursion, Ukrainian Kursk incursion. I was to Sumy, to a neighboring. Thank you. I was to Sumy Oblast this spring, where I met with Ukrainian local commanders. There was a lot of military activity going on at that point, and they were saying that they're preparing for Russian attack from Kursk. As a matter of fact, they were preparing to attack Kursk, which was a very skillful way of covering up the truth behind their operational intentions. So that's why I think there is a possibility that this had a deeper meaning to draw Russian troops from less important directions, because the Donetsk direction, which we discussed previously, is too important for Russia to withdraw forces to go and help to push back Ukrainian forces from Kursk direction, and Ukrainians must have known this, and therefore I think it's a potential hypothesis that they wanted to withdraw Russian forces from Zaporizhia region, convinced Russians that these positions are largely undemanned. I can confirm that. I've been there. I saw it. That really, units weren't really replenished. They were retired. They were complaining about lack of rotations. Blah blah blah. You know how it could look in practice, right? And therefore convinced Russians that this is a safe direction to withdraw troops from and then strike there. But I don't know. The other hypothesis, which is worse, and worst case scenario, is that Kursk offensive was the last stand of Ukrainian army. There is not much left in the tank, and they just want to use this land as a negotiations token chip. This is on the left. This is Gvozdika, self-propelled howitzer from Sumy region, from my spring trip. On the right, you can see naval drone. It's Neptune, if I'm not mistaken. But correct me if I'm wrong. This is from Odessa Black Sea Security Forum, also this summer this year. On the right, that's Orihiu region. On the left, it's me, my partner from company, and in the middle, it's a leader of Georgian National Legion, Mamuka. He's a friend of mine. It's probably the first public event he attended after he was poisoned. All right, so now some bit of truth. Why Russia is doing better now than in 2022 and what has gotten wrong for us. Firstly, we didn't assess properly why Russia is going to fight this war and how important this war is for Russians. Russian political elite is making this war into a survivalist, put this into a survivalist theme for entire Russian nation and for their political future. That's why it was inevitable that they will kickstart military-industrial production that is now working better than the whole NATO combined. I will show data for that. And the sanctions. We thought that we will supply Ukraine with old Soviet weaponry from post-Soviet countries. And we will impose sanctions that will finish Russian weak, archaic, and monotonous economy. That's what we thought. But this is a problem. We're using ideology in our analysis, and that's the problem. Because there is firstly no empirical evidence that any sanctions would coerce the sanctioned state to behave according to the international norm after the sanctions were imposed. Look at Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela. No empirical evidence that they would join liberal order. They would just, start behaving according to international norms. Not to mention the fact that you imposing sanctions in the conditions of a global, liberal, and open markets is just impossible. It's like you would imagine you have a river and you throw a rock in a river. What that river does is that it flows over the rock. It's like you create shell companies, you start exporting to other countries. I have data for how Russian oil has been, Russian oil flows have been changed. This all is there. Also, curse and blessings, Russia's raw minerals exports. Even though it's monotonous, everybody is interested in buying Russian military, not military, Russian raw minerals. Can Russia win the war militarily? Even despite all the presented data, I think Russia cannot win the war militarily. Even though it has a bigger population, it doesn't have resources to occupy the whole of Ukraine, to take over the whole of Ukraine. It can win on individual theaters right now, where it has momentum, but it cannot prevail. It is obvious that Russia is fighting at the peak of its capabilities down in Donbass region. Of course, there is a covert support from China in dual-use technologies, but again, it's interesting. On the right, you would see that Russia's GDP is growing faster this year than any G7 economies, GDP of any G7 economy. The problem is that Russia not only kickstarted its own military industrial production that is now working on 3 shifts. They're taking soldiers from the poorest economic backgrounds, from Siberia, from remote oblasts, which were previously making $200 US or $300 US a month. Now they're making $2,000 a month on the front line. Imagine 600,000 soldiers brought to the front line. They're sending money back to the poorest regions. They're supporting the local economy. They're supporting economic growth, plus the workers in military-industrial complex. Why is Russia capable of doing that? There are two things to note. Firstly, we didn't understand Russian economy at all, because Russia's economy is, in the Western economies and economic theory, everything is recorded in statistical offices, bureaus. We know every single stat, and we know for what it attributes and how it's going to change when we interfere in that. In Russia, there are large chunks of economy in black and gray zones. What Russia was capable of doing, they were capable of bringing this gray and black parts of economy into the legal system via the system of oligarchs that are allied with Putin. In short, I would just like to say one thing: what to do with revisionist Russia. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to the military technicalities. I'm happy to answer these questions. I'm sorry. What to do with Russia that is now outproducing NATO in terms of military shells. They're about to produce 4.5 million artillery shells against 1 million in the entire NATO. What to do with Russia that has gathered and trained and equipped more than 1 million soldiers that are already from the poorest backgrounds, now making tenfold more than before. Now they're skilled in murdering people. And what to do with Russia that its population is indoctrinated against West. They genuinely blame the West for all of their misfortunes, be it economic, political, or strategic. Everything is the Western fault in Russia. Not to mention that they call us gay Europa, which you would find that in popular discourse and propaganda channels, that they made it into a culture war in many spheres. So that's the question for all of you. I don't have an answer, but I'm a little bit anxious about the future of our relations with Russia. Thank you very much.